And for more, let's head over to Los Angeles, where we're joined by CNN senior political analyst Ron Brownstein. Ron, great to see you. Look,
Good to meet you, Jay.
you know how much President Trump did not want to oversee multiple wars during his second term, let alone get embroiled in a whole new conflict. I mean, for starters, how remarkable is it to you that he is seriously contemplating direct U.S. involvement in this new conflict? And how did he get here?
Well, the world events get a vote in the outcome of a presidency and how it unfolds, right? And presidents try to impose their design, but a lot of what they have to do at any given moment is react to events and to other players in the world. I think that there's obviously great division in kind of the media side of the MAGA universe. I am struck that on Capitol Hill, you don't really see any Republicans loudly warning about this other than the ones who usually do. My instinct is that Trump has more leeway in his base to go in either direction than it might seem from some of the loudest voices like Bannon and Carlson. But I also think that, as such a critic of the Iraq war as Trump was, not only Carlson, but Trump has been, I think he is going to be pretty cautious about wagering his presidency on launching his own, a military war really of choice in the Middle East. Certainly, any American diplomat or policymaker knows from the 21st century that these wars are easier to start than to finish.
Yeah, and as we saw in Donnie's report just now, it's not just his advisors who are split. It's really the prominent voices of the MAGA world.
Yeah.
They're all sort of working to try to influence him. I mean, if you had to guess, is there one faction right now inside the party, inside MAGA, that President Trump is probably listening to the most right now?
I think he feels tremendous freedom of action, as I said. I mean, the fact that among the elected officials, the people who are warning against doing this tend to be the people who are warning against doing it, always skeptical of foreign engagement, and that most Republican elected officials are saying they will trust his judgment in either direction. I think that's the signal of where the party is going to be. One thing that gives him more freedom of maneuver, is the fact that there is a broad consensus across the American political spectrum that it is a threat to the U.S. if Iran gets a nuclear weapon. Chicago Council on Global Affairs polling in April, 80% basically of Republicans, Democrats, and independents, men and women, all said that was an unacceptable outcome. So I think that gives him a lot of room. I don't think he has to be hugely afraid of the immediate political consequences either way. But I think obviously if you do this, you are essentially wagering your presidency on the prospect that it plays out the way that you hope. And what would give you confidence in that? Afghanistan, Iraq obviously did not. I think he has higher priorities in terms of what he is trying to do domestically, expand the power of the presidency, systematically weaken the ability of all sorts of institutions in blue America to resist him, pursue mass deportation. And he has to know that he is putting all of that in jeopardy if he gets involved in a conflict with Iran that may start swimmingly. You may be able to drop these bombs and do a lot of damage. That doesn't mean you can control all the ripple effects from that over the next several months and years.
And Ron, let me ask you about the Democrats. Do you see the party deploying any kind of coherent political strategy right now to capitalize on this moment of division inside the Republican Party?
Well, I think it is notable that Democrats are not in a mode of full-throated opposition either. I mean, Tim Kaine has his resolution, doesn't have, I think, any co-sponsors or a very few co-sponsors requiring even just a vote on an offensive action. I mean, like I said, the underlying reality is that there's an overwhelming majority of Americans who don't want or who believe it is dangerous for the U.S. if Iran obtains a nuclear weapon. Now, the initial reaction of the public is to oppose our direct involvement in this. And I don't think there would be a huge rally around the flag effect beyond the Republican base, where I do think you would see that. But, whether we're talking about the battle over deploying the military at home and the way Trump is conducting mass deportation, or we're talking about foreign affairs, The reality is that most Democrats in Congress, at least, don't really want to talk very much about either of those. They want to talk about the other big thing that's happening in Washington in the next few days, which is the reconciliation bill that's going to the floor that is going to, remove 16 million people from healthcare while cutting taxes for the rich. That is where they want to put their chips in the 2026 election. And there really isn't like a full-throated party decision to go after Trump very hard on anything else. And I do think there would be some division among Democrats. By and large, they would oppose. They would say they oppose our involvement, direct military involvement. But I don't think it will get to where we were in the later stages of the Iraq War.
Ron Brownstein, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.